Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. This is the post-game podcast. The Timberwolves defeated the Detroit Pistons by 11 on Thursday night in a game that should not have even been that close. The Timberwolves led by far more than that in the fourth quarter, but allowed Detroit to crawl back to within 5. A really great bench game again for Minnesota. Taurean Prince and Malik Beasley were arguably the best players on the floor, certainly offensively, for the Timberwolves in this game. We're going to break down key takeaways, how it all went down on Thursday night here on the show tonight. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm also the editor of Dunking with Wolves, the Timberwolves site on the Fansided Network. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend. This is a victory Friday. The Timberwolves beat the Detroit Pistons on Thursday by 11. This is the postgame podcast. We're going to break it all down, key takeaways, individual studs and duds. It's all upcoming on the show. First of all, though, thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Of course, Locked On Wolves is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken. That's with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. All right. Wolves beat the Pistons on Thursday, setting the stage real quickly. No Cade Cunningham for Detroit. I think that's important to note. Given that information, you'd think the Wolves would have maybe had an even easier time. Of course, Jeremy Grant was back. It was just his second game back from injury after missing an extended period of time. Also, Kelly Olynyk came in off the bench for Detroit in this game. Didn't play a whole lot, but was available for them. Obviously missing Cade Cunningham matters quite a bit. The Timberwolves still no D'Angelo Russell, no Josh Okogie in this game as well, although Patrick Beverley did play. Of course, he played on Tuesday as well, but he was available in this game for the Wolves. And Detroit has, they've lost, 10 to 12, I think, coming into this game. Had struggled quite a bit recently, struggled all year. They're 14th in the East and second to worst record in the entire NBA, 12-38 coming into this game. The Timberwolves, although they've played well at home, by the way, since the first of the year, I believe Detroit was 5-3 or 5-2 at home since January 1st. So, I mean, shown some signs of life. Again, no Cade Cunningham. The Timberwolves had won 2 in a row coming into this game and have still been the league's best offensive team really since the start of January, although the defense has struggled. And that's really what we saw in this game is Minnesota went to town on Detroit's defense and really didn't have any problems scoring. But defensively, the Timberwolves really struggled in this game once again. And that was kind of the story of the game. I was to summarize it in basically one sentence, it was more fantastic offense for Minnesota, granted against a poor defensive team. But Detroit, I think this is important to note, they were 29th in offensive efficiency coming into this game, and they didn't have Cade Cunningham, who's obviously one of their better players. And the Timberwolves give up 117 points in 48 minutes in a regulation 48-minute game, no overtime, to the Detroit Pistons. Not great. Detroit shot 44% from the field, 33% from the three-point line. There were a lot of free throws in this game. That was part of it. But of course, that's kind of the Wolves' MO is they can't defend without fouling. So it's coming out of this game. It was very much a taking care of business win for the Timberwolves. And it's important. A win is a win. It was still a double-digit win. It wasn't that, they didn't really have to sweat it out at the end. But you're talking about the league's second worst team missing one of their best 2 or 3 players, and the second worst offensive team in the entire league, and they hang 117, granted in a loss. Not a great feeling, honestly. Certainly not a sky is falling type thing. Again, a win is a win, and they took care of business, and they didn't sweat it out, but disappointing in terms of how the defense played in this game. Early in the game, the Timberwolves, and actually the first half of the first quarter was fantastic. They got up by as many as 9 before the midway point of the first quarter. It felt like they could put this thing away pretty early. But Detroit, really for the second part of the second quarter or second part of the first quarter and the entirety of the second quarter was extremely competitive. They scored 35 points in the second quarter. This was a 2-point Pistons lead, believe it or not, at halftime, which is not at all what Minnesota had in mind. The point of attack defense was miserable for Minnesota. Again, no D'Angelo Russell, and weirdly enough, and one of the weirdest twists of this season so far, the Timberwolves are far better defensively with D'Angelo Russell on the floor than without him. Patrick Beverley was okay defensively, but Anthony Edwards struggled. Jared Vanderbilt was fine, although the overall defensive rotations were not solid enough. When they went to zone, they didn't get out on the perimeter to contest jump shots well enough. Again, point of attack defense was the biggest issue. And it was just kind of a half step slow throughout the entire night. And the Wolves' hands were active in passing lanes, but their feet weren't active enough getting out to the perimeter. The low man wasn't quick enough to step up oftentimes. And they would just kind of get out of whack. And this was really for the majority of the first half. The third quarter, which has been the biggest issue for the Wolves for much of this season, certainly the last few weeks, is when the game got flipped on its head. The Wolves were a plus 11 in the quarter, and they were up 9 going to the fourth. And they closed very strong. And a lot of that was due to solid defense, but it was more of the offense clicking and Malik Beasley and Taurean Prince getting hot off the bench. And Karl-Anthony Towns, who had a relatively quiet, I think he had 6 or 8 points at halftime, he had a strong third quarter, and the Timberwolves were able to build that 9-point lead headed to the fourth. And the lead got up to, I think it was 12 or 14 in the fourth quarter before Detroit went on a bit of a run, and it got all the way down to 5 points in the fourth with just a couple minutes to play. And the Wolves actually had to work a little bit to pull away. This is actually a 16-point game. It was 117-101 with 7.5 minutes left. With 6 minutes left in this game. It was 117-101, a 16-point lead with 6 minutes to play. Detroit cut it all the way down to a 5-point lead, 117-112. So they go on a 9-0 run or a 10-0 run to make this a 6-point game. Make it a 5-point game. So an 11-0 run. And then the Timberwolves thankfully came down. Anthony Edwards gets the and one. The Timberwolves get a stop on the other end. Beverly makes a basket. Now it's a 10-point game again. And it was basically over at that point. The Pistons did get briefly back to within 5 with a minute and a half left. But it never really felt like it was in doubt because the Timberwolves defense at that point was solid. Towns had a couple of consecutive blocks in that final, that Pistons possession with just under a minute to play with the Wolves up 5. Towns blocked Sadiq Bey and Jeremy Grant. After it was a block, there was a rebound, a timeout. The Towns got another block. And then the Timberwolves came down and scored on their end, got another stop, scored again. And it was a 10-point game, and that was it. So a decent close after a really rocky middle of the fourth quarter, a very frustrating first half. But the first half of the first quarter, the third quarter, and the first part of the fourth quarter was strong enough for the Wolves to be able to build this lead against a bad team in the Pistons, frankly, and ultimately come away with the win. So it wasn't pretty at times. The defense was definitely shoddy, and I want to talk more about that, but there was just enough offense for Minnesota. I mean, we can complain about giving up 117 in 4 quarters, but scoring 128 in 4 quarters is that's nice. That'll play. I mean, you're going to win every single night if you score 128 in 4 quarters. So I want to do key takeaways next. I've got 3 that I want to key in on, and then we'll do individual studs and duds. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. As football continues the march through the playoffs right to the big game here in just a couple of weeks, actually just really a week and a half, betonline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, plus live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's talk individual studs and duds. First, though, let's talk about the trade deadline show. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen. The trade deadline is next Thursday, less than a week away, Thursday, February 10th at 2 p.m. Central. It's 3 p.m. Eastern. The Locked On NBA podcast will be covering it live from 1 to 3 p.m. Central, 2 to 4 Eastern. Join Kim Becker, John Corrales, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball host, the fantastic Josh Lloyd, to get analysis of every blockbuster move. Subscribe to Locked On NBA YouTube and turn your notifications on so you know when they go live. All right, let's talk key takeaways. So the first thing is the defense. I talked a little bit about this already. I'm gonna complain about it a little bit more, I guess. The point of attack defense. I mean, we're talking about the Detroit Pistons sans Cade Cunningham. So I mean, yeah, Jeremy Grant's a good player. He's not that scary off the bounce. He's not super efficient, and he wasn't in this game either. He scored 20 points on 16 shots. He was better as a catch and shoot three-point shooter, which is what he's been throughout his career. Saddiq Bey, though, was, again, not super efficient, 21 points on 21 shots, but he was active. He had 13 rebounds, including 6 offensive rebounds. Isaiah Stewart had 5 offensive rebounds himself. So it was a combination of these issues with point of attack, and then it was securing the defensive rebound. They gave up 13 offensive rebounds in this game. And second chance points, the Timberwolves were down 12-2 at halftime in second chance points. When it was all said and done here, what was the final in second chance points? I guess I don't have that right in front of me. I thought I did. But offensive rebounds, the Pistons won that battle 13-9. And that was an issue for Minnesota. But again, the point of attack defense, Corey Joseph was able to kind of probe and do what he wanted to do. Same with Saddiq Bey and Jeremy Grant to a lesser extent. And actually the bigger issue was Frank Jackson. I don't know how I didn't mention him first. He was far better than the starting backcourt for the Pistons. I mean, he finished this game with 25 points and 8 of 14 shooting, made 5 3-pointers in this game, only turned it over once in 27 minutes, ended up leading them in scoring. And just the consistency of the Timberwolves point of attack defense this year has been really frustrating because it's been so good at times, but they were just getting burned. I mean, pretty much anyone that was out there got burned at some point in this game, and the help side defense was just not there. The rotations were not crisp. The helping the helper was not happening. There were guys that, the first help would happen, the second one wouldn't, and there'd be wide open layups or lanes for offensive rebounds. It's just a lackadaisical effort. Outside of that, the first half of the first quarter, the Timberwolves were active. They generated 5-6 turnovers very early in the first quarter. And they continue that crazy stretch that they're on and forcing opposing teams to commit 10 or more turnovers. I talked about this on Thursday's show, previewing the game. The Pistons are a bottom 5 team in the league. I think they were actually the third worst team in the league in terms of offensive turnovers, committing turnovers. The Timberwolves continue to lead the league in forcing opponents to commit turnovers. So I said before the game, the Wolves should probably get the Pistons. I think I said 14-16 turnovers that the Pistons would commit. They committed 15 turnovers in this game, but a huge chunk of those were in the first quarter, and the Timberwolves stopped being quite as active early in the game as they were early in the game, and that allowed the Pistons to get back into it. I said this earlier. It was more, the Timberwolves had active hands in passing lanes. They had their hands up most of the time, but it was the feet that weren't there. So they got some deflections. They got some easy steals. They picked off some passes with anticipation early in the game, but helping the helper wasn't happening. The Xing out was not consistent. It wasn't crisp. 3-point shots were not getting contested on a regular basis. This is not a very good 3-point shooting team, and they shot 33%, which isn't great, but it's a little above what you'd expect them to do against a team that's supposed to be good defensively like the Wolves. So, I mean, you can get away with defense like this against the Detroit Pistons, and they play the Pistons again on Sunday. So, maybe they get away with it again, and maybe against the Kings next week too. But you play like this against the teams that the Timberwolves will face after these 4 games against the Pistons and Kings, and you're not going to win. I don't care if you think you're going to score 128 offensively. You're going to give up 130 if you play this defense against, I don't know, insert almost any team besides the Pistons or the Kings here, and it's going to be a major issue. So that was disappointing in this game for the Timberwolves. The second thing is I have a little bit of a concern about, and this is maybe a little bit, maybe I'm reading into this too much. I worry a little bit about what I like to call the Clippers syndrome, the Doc Rivers Clippers teams, with the issues that they always had with officiating. This Timberwolves team, and if you're a longtime supporter of the Timberwolves, you've seen Karl-Anthony Towns do his thing where he complains on almost every single possession. He gets in these ruts in his career. And again, to be fair, he's been much better this year, but it's not only him. And Patrick Beverley's got his own unique relationship with the officials. I think largely does a good job of walking that line. He did get a technical in this game, but officials around the league know what Patrick Beverley's up to. He's friendly with them. It's more just, he's kind of his own thing. But the problem is he can get away with that stuff. The other Timberwolves players can't. I mean, Karl-Anthony Towns got called for a technical for yelling for a foul on Beverley's shot attempt when Beverley got fouled. And it was Beverley who actually acted more demonstratively towards the official than Towns did. But the official hears Towns because they're also used to hearing Towns complain, and they're used to him yelling foul really, really, really loud. You can hear it on the TV broadcast. And so he gets called for a technical. Later, Beverley gets called for a technical, and then Anthony Edwards gets called for one for, I mean, again, it's more a reputation thing at this point. And it's a little worrisome to me because they're acting as though they feel they're entitled to some of these calls. And they're, coming into this game, a game above 500. They're in the play-in. They're 7th in the West, which is great. But you're not the Warriors. You're not, you're not even the Grizzlies, right? You're not the Bulls. You're not a team that necessarily has the status or as a organization to be complaining as much as they are. Yes, I will be the first to admit, or the first to argue, that the Timberwolves have gotten the short end of the stick a lot this year. They still are dead last in terms of free throw differential. They shoot way less free throws than their opponents do. They continue to get called for more fouls than any other team in the league. So there is something to that, but they can also overplay their hand, and it can be a little bit cringy to watch them complain as much as they do at times. So all this to say, I just think the Timberwolves need to be careful to not become the entitled Doc Rivers Clippers with Patrick Beverley, of course, who was on those teams, and just, have it be a complete wine fest the entire game. Now, Chris Finch does a really good job. He I think is very even keel. It seems like half the time he's upset at his own players, and half the time it's upset at the officials, and not upset at his players in a Tom Thibodeau way, not upset at the officials in a Doc Rivers way. I think he's fairly measured in the way that he responds to officiating issues, and also the way his own team is playing. So I think that is going to help. But the Beverly plus Towns and now Anthony Edwards is being a little bit more demonstrative in the way he reacts than he did certainly last year and even earlier this season. Hopefully that doesn't become a major issue. And it just stuck out in this game. The middle stages, they were getting frustrated. They were losing by a couple of possessions to a bad team, and they allowed those frustrations to boil over. The Pistons missed 2 out of the 3 technical free throws they attempted, but I thought that was a notable thing in this game was the gripes that the Timberwolves had with the officiating. I think they need to be careful moving forward that this doesn't become a routine thing. All right, my third key takeaway is I guess generally about the rotation, but specifically Malik Beasley. I mean, is this what we've been waiting for? Was it the threat of, the trade deadline is a week away or something that caused Malik Beasley to kick this into gear? I mean, what, 3 games ago, the loss to Phoenix, he was really good, 9 of 18 shooting, made 4 threes, had 26 points for the Wolves in that game. The Utah game wasn't as pretty. He shot 3 of 12, but then a pretty good game against Denver the other night. Granted, his former team, he plays well against them, but he made 4 threes, 12 points, 5 rebounds in 24 minutes off the bench. Now, in this game, he scores 18 points in just 20 minutes, 6 of 9 shooting, 4 of 5 on threes, was active, was good, did not turn the ball over. He's turned it over just 1 time over this last 4-game stretch. Now, he doesn't turn it over much anyway because he's just a catch and shoot guy, but still, he's playing cleaner. I mean, you go back and you look to some of the games earlier this year, he was averaging more than a turnover a game, even in his limited minutes. And now he's completely taking care of the ball. He's making far more shots than he was. He's now, over these 4 games, he's over 40%. He's going to start to drag that 3-point percentage up. And instead of being a volume guy, he's going to actually become what we thought he could be if he keeps up this hot stretch. Now, hopefully playing some more bad defensive teams, the Pistons again Sunday, 2 more games against the Kings, that can lead to some confidence for Beasley. And then that can cause him to as they start to play a tougher stretch in the schedule and better defenses, to continue to shoot the ball really well. Now, the trickle-down effect of Beverly coming back from injury and Beasley playing well is that Jalen Noel has seen his minutes shrink. 13 minutes played in this game. He was fine when he was on the floor. He scored just 3 points, but he made a three-pointer. But he actually had he only played 13 minutes. Naz Reid played 12. They were the 2 lowest minutes totals on the team in this game. So we're going to see, these minutes fluctuate. I mean, Taurean Prince was out of the rotation a couple of weeks ago, and he played 24 minutes and was phenomenal in this game. I talked about Beasley already, but Taurean had 23 and 6, 23 points, 6 rebounds in 24 minutes, made 5 threes himself. Beasley and Prince combined to shoot 9 of 11 on 3-point attempts in this game. So the rotation is going to continue to be tweaked a little bit by Chris Finch, but the Beasley thing, 6 days away from the trade deadline. Is he moved at the deadline? Do the Timberwolves play up this hot stretch, parlay that into potentially a Malik Beasley trade? Or do they say, hey, look, we didn't really want to trade him anyway. We think we've got something here. We think he can be the guy who scored 19.9 points per game in a Wolves uniform coming into this season, is under contract next year with the team option for the following year. Why would we trade him now when he could be that instant offense guy for us? And that depth piece, are we really going to get better? Do we really want to trade him and bring in a piece that we've got to then rework into the rotation and get used to the way we play over the final couple months of the season? So I think it's far more likely. I never thought it was likely Beasley was traded. I really don't think it's likely he's traded now. I just don't. And I think that it would be too much of a it would rock the boat too much for a guy who's now playing well again. Obviously, his teammates like him, and he was so good last year for Minnesota. There's a reason they signed him to the extension. So the point here, though, is the rotation. was tweaked a little bit. Beasley, Prince were fantastic off the bench, less Noel minutes. And it'll be interesting to monitor that moving forward, how that minutes allocation goes as we move ahead. All right. Let's do individual studs and duds from this game next here. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at Built Bar. It's the new year. That means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure that you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good, you'll want to eat it. Unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky or waxy or taste like a chemical spill, you want to eat healthy, but it just gets so boring. By like week 3, you might be thinking, this is not worth it. Where's the chocolate? Well, Built Bar has you covered because Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, just 4 grams of sugar, and only 4 net carbs, plus 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Here's an idea for the new year. Go to all your secret treat stashes at home, in the pantry, at the office, in the car, wherever they might be. Throw out all of the sugary or calorie-filled treats and replace them with Built Bars. So when you're craving a snack or a treat, you can reach for something that's healthy and tastes incredible. Even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. That way, when you enjoy a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout. There's so many flavors to choose from: coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and many, many more. In fact, I just got a shipment that had a blueberry muffin in it. It had the coconut brownie chunk, which are my favorites in it. I forget what the third one was, but those are my absolute two. Oh, raspberry was the third one. The coconut brownie chunk and blueberry muffin are my two favorites. They are phenomenal. Built Bar is always coming out with new limited time flavors. So check out built.com often to see what's new. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, let's talk individual studs and duds from this one. So the team was led in scoring by Anthony Edwards. I actually don't think this was that good of an Ant game. I mean, he had the big 3-point play to push the lead back up after it had gotten down to 5 in the final few minutes of this game. And it had a couple of nice kind of forays to the rim in this game. But generally speaking, it was not efficient for Ant. So he's not going to be one of my studs, even though he led the team in scoring 25 points on 21 shots. It was fine. Only 3 rebounds, just the 1 assist to 2 turnovers in this game. Ant was good. He was not great in this game. My number 1 stud has to be Taurean Prince. He was phenomenal once again. I mean, he is just on a completely unbelievable streak right now off the bench for Minnesota. In this game, 23 points on 8 of 13 shooting, 5 of 6 on 3-point attempts, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal for Taurean Prince. Look at what he's done over the past couple games. This is the second straight game he scored 23 points in 24 minutes off the bench. On Tuesday against Denver, 23 points on 12 shots, 6 made threes, 9 rebounds. This game, 23 points on 13 shots, 5 made threes, 6 rebounds. Just a really huge boost that he's given the team off the bench. By the way, he's played exactly 24 minutes in each of the last 4 games. He scored 10 3 games ago against Utah, 14 last Friday against Phoenix. So that's 4 consecutive games he's played 24 minutes, 4 straight games he's scored in double figures, and now 2 straight games he's hit 5 or more threes and scored 23 points. Fantastic play from Taurean Prince. We always knew he was going to be a good rotation piece, but he's been out of the rotation multiple times this year. He struggled so much with his shot, and now finally with this hot stretch, his 3-point shooting percentage is going to be right up around his career average. Once the numbers from Thursday get put on, onto Basketball Reference, we're going to see that number kind of be right around where he's been at for his career, that 38-ish, 38% from outside the arc on the season. So it's hard to say enough about what Taurean Prince did in this game, once again for Minnesota. Another stud for me, of course, Malik Beasley. Already talked about him. 18 points in 20 minutes, 6 of 9 shooting, 4 of 5 on threes, 2 of 2 at the line, 2 assists, 1 rebound, 1 steal, no turnovers for Malik Beasley. He was second on the team in plus minus with a plus 13. Weirdly, Prince was only a plus 2. But again, lots of noise with a single game plus minus. So a good game from Malik Beasley. My third stud is going to be Karl-Anthony Towns. This was not a gaudy numbers game for him, but it was an effective game. 21 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists. He did turn it over 5 times. There was a travel that it was a travel, but should have been a foul first early in the game. He had a couple bad passes, but overall, a pretty good game for Cat. He was 0 of 4 on threes, but he was 9 of 10 at the free throw line. I mean, 21 points on 15 shots is fine. And again, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks. And both of those blocks were in the final minute on the kind of the final, like, really important possession for the Pistons when it was still a 5-point game with just under a minute to play. And Towns blocked Bay and Grant, I believe, both in the paint, for both Pistons players in the paint on that possession on either side of a timeout. So really strong game from Towns, good defensively even before that, but generally speaking, just a really good game from Cat. Also notable, I mean, these guys also played really well. Jared Vanderbilt, 13-6 with 2 steals in this game, 5 of 6 shooting, typically efficient for him. Patrick Beverley stuffing the stat sheet with 11 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, only 1 turnover. So a good game from him as well. Quiet games from Naz Reid and Jalen Noel. Also, Jaden McDaniels was good in this game, 10 points, only had 2 rebounds in 32 minutes. Jordan McLaughlin was really good off the bench, running the second unit, 8 assists, 0 turnovers in 16 minutes, and a team best plus 19 in the plus minus column. He only scored 2 points. He only attempted 1 shot from the field. So really solid game for Jordan McLaughlin. And he's been kind of an unsung hero with D'Lo out the last week plus now. Jordan McLaughlin's been very good. He got a couple of starts in there. I guess maybe just one start in there, but has played well when he's been called upon for the Timberwolves. And after having a rough start to the season, I mean, he was not good at all. The whole really first like 3 months of the year, 2.5 months of the year. And then now over the past week to 2 weeks, he's been really solid for the Timberwolves and for Chris Finch. So obviously he won't be in the rotation once D'Lo gets back, but because he's played so well, it allowed the Wolves to let D'Lo sit these last 2 games. I'm sure they considered having Russell play Tuesday and Thursday, but now they've got 2 days off, Friday, Saturday off before they play the Sunday matinee. It wouldn't surprise me if Russell's back. I mean, he was questionable for this game. So, you give him an extra 3 days of rest by him not playing tonight. Maybe Russell comes back on Sunday to play the Pistons at Target Center in the matinee. All right. Just a quick snapshot of the standings now and what's next for the Wolves. After this win, the Timberwolves are still 7th in the West. They're now, though, a game and a half clear of the Clippers, who are sitting in 8th. And they are well, I say that the Clippers are actually playing as I record this. They're playing the Lakers. They're up by 5 at halftime. So could be back to 2 games, or it could be, back to 1 game if the Clippers win. But at the moment, they're a game and a half clear of the Clippers in the 7th spot. They're only a game and a half behind Denver for the 6th spot in the Western Conference. And of course, the 6th spot means you're out of the play-in. And right now, the Wolves would be in that coveted 7th spot's a good spot to be in. The 6th spot is an even better spot to be in, obviously. And Minnesota is only a game and a half behind Denver, and at the moment has the tiebreaker 2-1 over the Nuggets with 1 game to play between the two. Next up, the Wolves have the Pistons on Sunday. That's a 2:30 p.m. tip at Target Center, the rare Target Center matinee against the same Pistons team. And then they go on the road for back-to-back games consecutively at Sacramento. Same team, same arena, next Tuesday and Wednesday. Late tips, 9 o'clock both days, Central against the Kings. So 3 more winnable games. We'll see if the Wolves can't win all 3 and get themselves a 6-game winning streak before they head to face the Bulls at United Center next Friday night. Even if they win 2 out of 3 there, of this next 3, you're still looking at 5 wins out of 6. I think that would be completely reasonable with the back-to-back upcoming, but really good to get this win at Detroit in a game where they just didn't play their best for the middle chunk of it. And generally this was a solid win. All right, that's all we have for you today. Thanks again for listening to Locked On Wolves and for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, the show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms from Apple to Google, Spotify to Odyssey. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Thanks again for listening to Locked On Wolves. Of course, the podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. As you make Locked On Wolves your first listen, don't forget to make your second listen Locked On Bets. It's your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.